Hey, welcome back to Divinely Uninspired, episode 20. Shot out of a cannon this morning. I saw Penny look at me when I did that. Like, what's wrong with you? And I am here with Penny this morning. Penny, how are you?
I'm hanging in there. Busy month.
Yeah, I get you. And as always, our fearless leader, Jeremy.
How are you guys doing?
Wonderful. Well, I'll let you answer, Penny, because
Penny, are you doing? Yeah, don't let man speak for you.
Yeah.
This is 2022. You
That's
speak
right.
for yourself.
We empower you.
I just told you I'm good. I'm just a little overwhelmed. May is very busy in my household.
Yeah. Well, you can tell us a little bit more about that in a little while. And then always the incomparable Paul Roughton is joining us again this week.
Hey, what's up?
Good. Well, yeah. Wonderful. Glad you're here.
I was waiting for the how am I doing? But
How are you doing, Paul?
I'm good.
Good.
Yeah.
Good. Glad I asked.
It's not a very incomparable answer.
No, it's not.
No.
Hey, Derby is over. And I'm glad Derby's over. I know that, like, for people that aren't from the state, they think it's like either a really big deal or they don't even know it's happening. And it's not that I don't like the Derby. It's just it I don't know. It's just old hat at this point. What do you guys think? You glad Derby's over? Anybody make any money off the races?
I love the Derby, but I like it because it's the only time of the year that people know Kentucky, like other than like basketball season possibly. But you know, when you go places like, oh, you're from Kentucky, like, what do you know about bourbon and Derby? That's pretty much all they know. So it's something that is a talking point for people because we're known for the Derby. It's a big deal. It's a big deal, not just here, but worldwide.
Oh yeah, it is. People would, when I lived abroad, they would watch it. I mean, there were people not having Derby parties, but they.
I am a little bit with Derby. How we get so excited about B-list celebrities here in Louisville, though.
No, we don't. No, we
yes,
don't.
we do. It's we like that. We just show. Oh, there's some. A guy that played in a television show on ABC in 1987 is here. Oh yeah.
Some D-list celebrities are coming. Yeah, I agree.
They could not be more excited that Jack Harlow is from Louisville.
Oh my goodness!
Please stop with him.
An actual
but
celebrity.
He's becoming a big deal. Like I think that people think that
he's talented.
He's becoming like a big deal. Like when you're hanging out with Drake, you're on the cusp of something.
Yeah. I like Jack Harlow personally, but yeah, like I saw.
Are you guys friends? You said personally, like
no. Okay, shut up. I personally feel that he is a talented artist. I'm not friends with him, though. Jack, if you're listening, shoot me an email. So I don't know. I think that I saw like Kid Rock's always here, but this time he showed up with a bag of White Castles.
Yeah,
and so I mean. That's what
I'm just always amazed. I don't know who half the people they march out for like these parties. I'm like, I don't know who the person is.
The Barnstable Brown Gala.
Like I know the athletes, like there's a lot of big athletes come in town and the musicians, but like some of the actors and stuff, I'm like, I don't know who this person is.
Some of the musicians, some of them are like, this is the backup, bassist for,
Ace of Base.
Yeah, Ace. Yeah. Yes, they have two bass players.
Wait, wasn't Trump here as well?
Well, we don't talk about Trump.
Yeah.
No,
we
but
don't talk about Trump. No.
They just shot like one picture of him and I'm like, wait a minute, is he actually here? Like, that's weird.
Was it live via satellite? Like his
walk down the red carpet or anything?
No, Leah, actually, my wife was at the Derby. She worked the first aid tent, which I'm not really, this is not a slam on her, but she's not clinical. She like works in an office, but whatever. I guess you can put Band-Aids on boo-boos. But she sent me a picture. She was like, guess who's here? And I was, well, okay, well, good for him, I guess. So, but Rich Strike and a horse that wasn't even supposed to be in the race wins.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah. So I don't do a lot of gambling, but I do put a couple of dollars down on Derby. And I literally every year I put money down on the long shot. And when I like put my money down, it was like an hour before, and another horse was still the long shot. And then Rich Strike did it. And it's not like I knew Rich Strike was going to win, but I would have put money on him if I would have known that he was going to be the long shot. And I saw somewhere like the bet that I did, if I had done it, would have paid out like $4,000 on a $2 bet. And I was like, what?
The goal is always to see what horse goes to the bathroom right before the race. That's the horse that'll win.
But Jeremy brings up a good point because that's my system is the exact box. You take the best horse and the worst horse, because if you made $10, who cares? But if you win 4,000, that's, can you imagine all that money?
Can you imagine? I'd have paid for our deck. We're building for our pool, but it is not to be, I guess.
So let's just hypothetically, you could put $2 down on every horse.
So we have a friend that did that, put $2, but now you got to do an exacta box to win the 4,000. But if you'd have put $2 down on that, you'd have won 160.
Right.
So we have a friend that they did that. They just put $2 to win on every horse and still end up winning $120 because the long shot won. Now, most years that's not going to pay out for you. You're just going to lose money. But for this year, because it was the long shot. Because if the favorite wins, you're losing all that money you bet.
Right. But isn't that better odds than just betting on one horse in general?
See, the thing I wanted to bet on was after the race, who was going to win in a fight? The guy who was punching the horse in the face or the horse that was biting him on the leg?
I think it was awesome that the horse was just biting the
I
horse
agree.
and then biting the person and just like,
it was
leave me
awesome.
alone. I just won the Derby.
Yeah, I missed that. What happened?
So the horse that won, Rich Strike, as you know, they always have the guy who comes up and rides alongside and tries to help. Well, Rich Strike just wasn't having it, and he started biting the other horse, and then he started biting the guy on the leg, and the guy was like trying to get the horse to stop, so he just started punching it in the head. And so
that's what they were saying. Like somebody tweeted, like, can you imagine like Tom Brady winning a Super Bowl and like the ref just starting to punch him?
Yeah.
You know, it's like, I mean, this is like the biggest, anyway.
So the Derby is over, and we are all rich because
See ya.
we
No, we're not.
No, we lost. All right, we're gonna listen to our theme song, and then we'll get going. Here we go. 1, 2, 1, 2, 3, 4. You're listening to Divinely Uninspired, podcast by Journey Church Shepherdsville, hosted by Jeremy Willis and me, Rusty Wilson. You can find us online at journeyshepherdsville.com. For questions or comments, email podcast@journeyshepherdsville.com. Maybe we'll feature your question or comment on a future episode. Thanks for listening. Enjoy the show. So we're going to talk weird science news for a second, and specifically, we're going to talk about IQ levels. Does everybody here know what their IQ is, or does anybody know what their IQ is?
No idea.
Off the charts.
I actually took a test when you sent the text about what it was going to be.
What it come out as?
I have a note. Hang on. It was a free test, but it came out to 143.
Oh, wow. That's fantastic. Good for you.
Is that good?
That means you're a genius.
Yeah, that's like Einstein level.
It was a free test, so
Yeah.
let's keep in mind.
Right. Yeah, those free tests.
Everybody's a genius on that test.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I'm 140. What'd you say yours was?
3.
4. I'm 144. So
I've never actually done an IQ test.
I haven't either.
I'm planning to do one.
I feel I'm too nervous to do it, because then like I have a lot of self pride and feeling like I'm an intelligent person. If I came back and it was like I was dull or something, I would not handle that well. I'm feeble minded. But we're going to talk about the fact that there are these two little girls separated at the age of 2, and they were born in South Korea, and they were reunited just recently and given IQ tests. And I'm not shocked by this, but the Korean child was smarter by 16 points than the U.S. Well, they're not children anymore because they were born in 74. But the Korean individual was significantly smarter than the American person. Are we shocked by this at all? Penny, is somebody who's married to a half Korean person.
Did you do this on purpose?
I did not. It wasn't totally. I mean, it was like well, let's talk about this. But then it worked that you've
Wait
got
a minute.
dog in this fight.
I think that you need to reiterate that the fact that they are both Korean, but one was raised in America, correct?
Yes, correct. Well, they were twins, so they were both born. They are South Korean, and one was adopted by Americans, and the other stayed in South Korea.
So it's not about the fact that they're Asian. It's just the fact that they were raised in different countries.
Well, yes.
Okay.
Yeah. That I wasn't trying to. You're going to get me in trouble here. Really,
what was the implication here?
I don't know.
That Asians are smarter than white people, which is true.
It is.
Did you watch the Beijing Olympics? Did you see that opening ceremony?
I did.
America could not pull that off if we tried, because we would have too many people being like, I just don't feel like it today.
Yeah. Well, I did this because, Penny's husband is half Korean and her children then are quarter Korean, right? And
yeah.
So like, what are your feelings about Korea?
Specifically the northern part.
Yeah. I mean, are you for it? Are you?
I mean, it's pretty clear that the fact that they value education a little different than we do in America, but also too, I will say this enough that how you were raised plays a toll on your education. So if someone is raised in Korea and they value education there and push for that, as let's just say in America, we value success. So, and we feel success is made from how well you do in school. Like keep going to school so you can be successful and rich. In Korea, it's not the same way. They value that because it's important to better yourself. So, and also to take into consideration that this girl that was raised in America, like the story behind it is she got lost, correct?
Yes.
And then she got adopted. So she's traumatized. There's that trauma that could have led to, something, an implication that affected her down the road. So
did she get lost herself or did they lose her?
Scholars maintain this information. I'm not sure.
She may not have been the sharpest of the twins.
Yeah, if she got lost on herself, that's
And also too, Koreans, they teach differently. They teach math differently. They teach reading differently. I mean, it's a different system. So yeah, I mean, how they're doing it is probably better than how we're doing it here.
Yeah, I mean, I was just looking this up I knew that America wasn't number one. I think that's the biggest problem is America always thinks we're number one in everything. And we're just not. And like when you look at all healthcare we're not number one. We haven't been in a while. But South Korea is number one in the world right now, followed by Canada and then Russia. Ooh, shouldn't have said that one. Japan, Ireland,
we'll bleep it.
Ireland, Lithuania.
What?
And then Switzerland, and then Australia, and at number 10 comes the great United States of America in education rating. Top 10. We're top 10. But yeah, we're not number one, which I think most people would think that we were, but we're not.
Yeah, we're not.
And I love America, but I do think we have an arrogance to that stuff where we just think we're number one in everything, and we're not.
We're told from very young age that not only is our country number one, but we are number one. People that just deify their children and you're so great. You're doing so well. You're so funny and cool and cute.
This is true.
And you're like, but kind of dumb.
And Jokic just won MVP in the NBA. We haven't had an American win the MVP in the NBA in like 6 years.
We're falling apart,
we are
people.
Falling apart.
We got to get back on top. That's what we got to do, right? That's what Jesus said we should do.
Jesus said America first. Is that what you're saying? Is that?
That's what people think he said, but I don't find that anywhere in the Bible personally. But
we did create McDonald's and McCoke, and they're doing pretty good.
McCoke? I've not had
I said McDonald's and Coke.
Oh, I thought you said McDonald's and McCoke.
Yeah.
They do have the best Coke there, so you can call it a McCoke if you really want to.
But I'm saying as far as that goes, we're pretty much running the world between McDonald's and Coca-Cola.
That's true.
Netflix.
Yeah.
And Netflix, yes.
Netflix.
Until they offshore that.
So we are number one. Sorry, I take that back.
In the things that matter, I guess we are. So Penny, are you pro or anti-Korea? You never answered.
That is a weird question to ask
Just
me.
answer it. Just answer the question.
Well, I think it depends if you're talking about North or South.
I know.
It doesn't matter. It's just.
I am pro Korean education system. I feel that they do push their children to educate and better themselves for the right reasons, as opposed to here we do it as so that you can be at the top of the ladder and be successful. And I don't necessarily feel like that's the best way to approach it.
But she did buy a Korean car.
Yeah.
I'm married a Korean. What do you want me to do here?
We own a Korean car.
Well, I just want to hear you say I'm pro Korea.
And it's just going to be that. Like it's going to be Jeremy saying Russia and then be pro Korea.
That's right.
And the flag is going to fall.
That's right. So what do you think of Kim Jong-un? Because, the books there say that he doesn't go to the bathroom and.
I'm not even sure he's still alive. So.
Oh.
Hey, the sun came up this morning. He's still alive.
That's true. The things that come out of that like he doesn't have a I don't know how to say this. A beehole. He doesn't have that.
Well, no, it's not that he doesn't have one. I thought it was that he eats the exact right amount of calories every day for his body to burn. So he doesn't have. There's no waste. So what they say is that he eats the exact right amount of food and the exact right amount of calorie to where there's no waste at all, which doesn't make sense scientifically because it has nothing to do with calories. Anyway.
I thought he didn't have one, but I mean, not that I thought he didn't have. I thought that's what
conversation has turned the wrong direction.
Well, you can't believe everything you see on the internet, Rusty.
Well, I know, but I saw this on a specific page on the internet that it's pretty trustworthy. It's on the dark web. So let's talk in other Korean news. It's just a day of Korean news. I'm not kidding.
Is it like their national holiday that we don't know about?
Yes, it's I don't know
Subaru Day?
Yes, Subaru Day, which I didn't know. I thought that was an Australian company until like a month ago. A billionaire who invested, quote, according to the word of God, is charged with multi-billion-dollar fraud. This will be the biggest scandal in the Wall Street world since Bernie Madoff. And he is a Korean man by the name of Bill Hwang. And he for years has been putting out his philanthropic efforts and capitalizing upon people's well, let's do what God wants us to do. And now we find out that he is in deep doo-doo because he has been lying and stealing and embezzling. And so, Penny, I want to ask you, what do you think of Korea?
I'm still trying to figure out, did he invest and become a billionaire based upon just using the Bible to do stocks? Is that what I'm coming? That's what
I
you're,
don't think he
you're
used the
telling
Bible.
me.
He just said God said,
Yeah,
which
he-
is like the straw man argument.
Right.
God told me to do this.
Jeremy loves when people say, well, God said to me. I feel like God said to me.
Yeah.
Because how do you argue with that?
The straw man. Yeah. It's
Yeah.
All right, well, go ahead, Jeremy. Tell me what you think
What do you think of Korea, Jeremy?
of Korea.
I mean, I drive. We
Does he
have
need
a
the
Korean
music
car.
first, Jeremy?
Yeah. And I like their barbecue. And
I do like Korean barbecue.
Yeah, I have nothing against Korea, and but no, this is a weird story. I think it really is, and I think it's a completely different thing than what we talked about a couple weeks ago with like all the fallout of like Hillsong and stuff. But it's along the same line of like people like claiming God and then just doing really kind of terrible stuff. Does that make sense? And I think it just furthers that narrative of like it just doesn't look good for Christians. And I don't know if he was doing this as a Christian or if he was just, like I said, saying that because God told me to do this or God told me to, but
Well, his company is named Archegos or Archegos, depending on your pronunciation of the Greek, which is the word described in Hebrews to describe Christ as author.
Yeah.
And so he's pretty all in on the whole.
But I think I would say too, like, I mean, we all know this. Like, just because you're a Christian doesn't mean you're a terrible person. You know what I'm saying? I mean,
I think you meant the opposite.
Yeah, I think
Yeah,
just because you're Christian. I mean, because some people would say that, yeah, because you're a Christian, you are a terrible person.
well, no, I mean, just because you're claiming to be a Christian doesn't mean you can't be a terrible person.
Oh, yes,
that's what
absolutely.
I meant to say. Sorry,
Yes.
let me correct that. So, yeah, I mean, there's, because I think it also goes into, and we don't have to get into all this, but like we talked about this last time. My understanding of the Bible is it's less about what you believe and more about what you do with the life you've been given. And so you can say you believe all kinds of stuff, but if you choose to act in these ways and do these things, then that really tells you what your real value system is. So,
all right. So Korea, yes,
but this isn't about
no.
Korea. This is about a billionaire in Korea.
He's actually here in the States.
Oh, well, he's a Korean billionaire.
Yeah.
So the issue is he involved other people into this scheme? Is that what I'm getting at? Because
Well, yeah, he's done this. He did the same thing that Bernie Madoff did, where he essentially ripped off all these people in a Ponzi scheme type thing. So,
But I would say a lot of those people too that probably worked for him didn't know what they were doing. Now, there's probably some that just turned a blind eye. But like,
sure,
I was watching the Big Con. Have you guys heard about this on Apple TV? It's actually filmed in Eastern Kentucky, and the lawyer that was ripping off all these people was like $500,000. Like most of the people working for him didn't know they were doing anything wrong.
Right.
They thought they were actually helping people, but he knew. And so like maybe there's similarity. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I think a lot of these people at the top, they know what they're doing. And there's probably some people that do, but a lot of people are probably like, oh, we just thought we were doing this and it was okay, but you're not.
Yeah. Well, once again, it's money is the root of all of our sins. That's what the Bible says, right, Jeremy?
Something like that.
Yeah. I don't actually think it says that.
Well, it says you can choose to serve one or two masters, and money is always the other master.
Yeah,
So-
and the love of money is the root of all kinds of
Sin.
evil. Yeah,
Yeah.
whatever. So money itself is fine. It's just
It's neutral.
Yeah. What do you do with it? It's a tool. Okay. So let's talk about Roe v. Wade, because it has been in the news like
Just the
crazy.
light
I mean,
stuff today,
I
right?
know, right?
Yep,
My
yep,
goodness.
Yep. Well, we started with the light stuff with Korean
You
people.
basically put Penny on the spot about her feelings about Korea.
I did. It was intentional. That's why we did it, and that's why this is Divinely Uninspired. Download us on Spotify.
Do we do well in
or
Korea?
Stitcher.
Do we have Korean
We
listeners?
do, and it's
We're gonna have a bunch more.
I'll make sure my husband listens to this podcast.
That's right. He can send it to his friends.
What is happening? Please, let's stop talking about Korea.
What if we become like an international sensation
Yeah,
in Korea?
that's right.
Because
Yeah,
I'm pro Korea. I drive a Subaru. I like the barbecue.
That's great. You're gonna become a celebrity there.
Yeah.
You can run for president.
Yeah.
So Roe v. Wade, the situation there. Obviously, a lot of people have very strong feelings about Roe v. Wade and the legalization of abortion. And a leak happened from the Supreme Court, which has never happened before, that said that the opinion as it stands right now is that Roe v. Wade will be struck down. And there's a little bit of what feels like hysteria going on both the left and the right. So the question is are they actually going to end it? And if so, what does that mean? And so I don't know that we are qualified to answer those questions, but I think we can talk about, do we think that this is a good thing or a bad thing, or is it not that clear?
Go ahead, Paul.
All right, I raised my hand because it's a
You don't need to. You speak into the
audio
mic.
thing. All right, so
But speak into the mic. You're trailing.
Roe v. Wade. What was that actual decision? Because I've heard a lot of stuff. They're like, well, abortion was legalized and now it's going to be illegal. But what was the actual case? Because I feel like they're talking about these trigger laws that are going into effect in the states if that happens. But what was the actual decision in Roe v. Wade? Like what?
I believe the decision was that states did not have the right to decide that on an individual level. That federally there had to be some sort of ability for the federal government to say, like, this, we permit this. Like, you're not allowed to completely strip that away. That's why you've got these like 6-week abortion bills and stuff like that, where they're not getting rid of abortion entirely according to the letter of the law, but effectively they are, because most people don't know that they're pregnant by 6 weeks. So it has to do with the state level of being able to decide.
I mean, essentially what Wikipedia, which we keep going back there, says
it's very wise.
It protects a pregnant woman's liberty to choose to have an abortion without excessive government restrictions. This decision struck down many U.S. federal and state laws. So it overrode any of the laws that were local or that type on the local level. But essentially, that was the ultimate decision with that. But yeah, no, I mean, everybody's going to have different opinions and thoughts, and maybe even in this room. My personal opinion is it ending? I don't know. I think these things, I've heard lots of times things like this were going to end, not just this thing, but there's, and until it happens, I don't ever get involved until I find out, it's out of our control, really, whether this is going to happen. It's the Supreme Court. Obviously, I think it's a good thing that if it ends, but I am in this place where I'm confused what happens next. That's the part where I'm like, obviously. And when I say it's a good thing that Roe versus Wade ends, I think it's a good thing that legalized abortion ends. That's my personal views. I don't think it's a good thing. My personal feelings are, and you can disagree, that slavery and abortion are two of America's greatest sins that have happened, legalized abortion. But I am concerned what's going to happen after if it does get overturned. Do you know what I'm saying? Like, what happens next? What culturally, what happens in the war between Christians and non-Christians and Republicans and Democrats. I think there's going to be a lot of stuff that happens, which concerns me. And I don't think it's clear cut. Like, okay, just because it ends, everything's going to be better now. Like, I mean, drugs are illegal, but people still go find ways to do drugs and end up hurting themselves and others because, you know what I'm saying? Because they go all these different routes. And so are people going to stop doing these things just because it's not done in Planned Parenthood or these, medical facilities and stuff like that? So I think there's just a lot of questions to it. I mean, from a personal level, do I think legalized abortion potentially ending is a good thing? Yes. But there's a lot of questions that come with the fallout, I guess, of that I think I'm kind of going back, okay, like what's going to happen next? And I don't know. I don't think anybody does.
Yeah. Yeah. What about you, Penny?
Oh, I knew it was going to come to me. I'm the only woman in this room right now, and I'm not really sure I feel that comfortable even discussing this with you all. So I'm not really going to give whether or not I agree that it should or should not. I think there's a lot of gray area when it comes to abortion. And as Jeremy said, the fallout, if this does happen, what will happen to those women who want to get an abortion and do something really stupid? And I think we need to take into consideration, if this does stay legal and in place, just because it's there doesn't mean we have to agree with it or abide by it. Does that make sense? So like, just because like the death penalty, I don't agree with it, but it's still legal. So it just is what it is. Just because we don't agree with it, it doesn't make it any different in your head whether or not you think it should be legal or not. So
sure. Well, and yeah, I do agree that there's a lot of gray, because I mean, with even the language we choose, like, well, you're pro killing babies. Well, no, that's
Not
not
necessarily.
what
No.
people who are pro choice actually think. And some people would say to the pro life people, well, you're just pro birth because you don't care what happens after they're born because
Right.
you're not willing to put in place those other things. And so I do think there's a lot of gray, and we do have to ask the question about, and I know that it's a, it's a go-to for a lot of people, but what do you do with a baby that's going to be born? I mean, Leah and I had a friend who they were told your baby is at 20 weeks and doesn't have a brain. And now it's still living, and it will die shortly after it is born. But what do you do with that? Is that that's a really complicated question? Or well, this baby is it's a pregnancy that's going to potentially kill mom, and mom's got 2 other kids at home and in a family. What do you do? I mean, I think that there has to be conversation about that. And the thing that bothers me most is when people say like, well, it's God's will that this baby be born. Otherwise it wouldn't, that baby wouldn't have been whatever.
Yeah. And I think that is, and I'm glad that Penny said what you said. I mean, obviously we're guys. And so this becomes, for some people, for most people, it is a woman. She is the one carrying the baby. She's the one having to go through all that, and I think that it just gets really ugly really fast when people start talking about it. And that's why when I even said what I said, that's my opinion. I don't need you to believe that or not believe that. I mean, that's my opinion. That's my understanding. I do think there's sanctity of life. I also will say, for all the good that modern medicine has given us, it's also complicated things like this. I mean, we heard recently, about people, that like fertilized eggs that are already fertilized, which is, okay, is that life of consent? I don't know. I'm not educated enough to know, like, are those eggs that are fertilized, are those human beings at that point? I don't know. I mean, and so I think there's so much to this conversation. I think the thing that scares me the most is just how ugly, it's already so ugly. How ugly is it going to get after whatever happens? If it does get overturned or not, like, what is the fallout of it between people, and the politicization of it, but also just like, you're going to have so many strong feelings and opinions. And I think it's going to get really nasty.
No, I agree with you. One of the big issues I have right now with it is the celebrities that are speaking up about it. And most of the celebrities that are speaking up about it are giving reasons of going, well, I was 19 and I was starting my career. And I'm like, oh no, we don't need to tell our young this. This is not what we need to say. Like, I think that the gray areas are what becomes complicated, rape, incest, stuff like that. And baby issues not developing correctly. Like, that's the things that I'm talking about. But when we're doing something, taking away life just because of selfish reasons, that's that's why I don't really give my opinion, because I'm not really sure where I belong in the opinion, because I'm done having children. So
well, I think it goes back to the last thing where we were saying that people in this country aren't necessarily raised to be smart and to be educated, and we're kind of being raised to, we're the center of attention. Like, we are the center of the story, and everything else just goes on around us. So we've not been taught, like, people I mean, I have 2 kids, and it never once occurred to me that, oh, we are creating another life. It's like, oh, you just get married, you have kids, and you have a family. And it's like the act of creating another life and bringing another soul into the world is just so, I mean, it's an afterthought. And then you think, well, I don't really want this to happen. And then, well, we just get rid of it because it's fine, because but I mean, there are a lot of situations, like you said, I mean, whether it's rape or if it's incest, or if, I mean, in all honesty, a lot of the people that they say it's, lower poverty that have these troubles, and that have, a lot of other education issues that they've had, in life. And, they're going to bring a child into a world that, they're going to have a terrible time of it, that child being born. But, they're getting a chance, but they're getting a rough go. So, I mean, I don't think we don't, I think we take life for granted a lot, or other people's lives for granted. And as Christians, we could do a better job of helping these circumstances.
Well, I think that's always been my issue with it, is that I believe in the sanctity of life, and I believe that life is a precious gift given from God. And I do, an opinion again, I do believe that all life has the right to be protected. At the same time, a lot of the people that I see get so upset about issues like this, and I do think it's an issue, are also the people like, okay, we stop someone from having an abortion. Yeah, but are you going to be there for that woman and that kid because they don't have a good chance of making it well in this world? You know, and I think that we think that, oh, well, another baby was born, we won the battle. And I'm like, yeah, but are we helping those people to really have life? And I think as Christians, I think it's a good point is that we have to be better at that. And you know, there's so many other issues in our country that get be a part of impact kind of people's decisions in this choice. And so it's just like I said, I don't want to get because I'm even uncomfortable talking about it because it just is
I already
like,
told you
no matter what I say, people are going to think
Yeah.
that I'm saying one thing. And again, it's always not what I say, it's what you hear. But I just think it's I think it's very complicated. I do think that my biggest concern, whether it does or doesn't end, is the fallout of it. And even if it doesn't end, okay, well, then what happens? Because people are going to be upset because it's been leaked that there's a possibility,
Right.
you know? And so now it's like people are going to, it's just, I don't know. And at the end of the day, whether you do or don't agree with the decision, like we still have to love people. You know, I had a professor one time tell me, and it stuck with me. We were talking about this in class, and it got really heated in class. And most people were obviously against abortion. You know, I'm in a Bible college, so what do you expect? But there were a few people that were bringing up the questions that we're talking about, not that they were against it getting overturned, but just some of these questions. And people were just being so nasty to them. And our professor stopped the conversation, and he was like, you know, could you love somebody that had an abortion? And like, it just like stopped the room. And it was just like, just a simple question of like, okay, like we're not saying whether it's right or wrong that this person did this, but could you still love somebody that did that? And of course we're all like, yeah, we're supposed to love everybody. We're supposed to love people when they make these choices. And he was like, okay, so then why can't we love each other right now when we're having differences of opinion? You know? And it was just like, this like
then
moment.
he dropped the mic.
Yeah, and then he dropped
out.
the mic and walked out. But yeah, I just it's very uncomfortable. More uncomfortable than talking about Korea for sure. And you know,
who picks these topics?
I agree. Rusty, come on.
I just listen. This is what the people want to know.
Wait till you hear the next topic.
Yeah. This one, I honestly thought Jeremy might have an aneurysm or stroke or something today when he saw what we were talking about. Okay, so we are going to. Well, I'm sure we will talk about this more in the future because there will be more to talk about one way or another. But let's talk about what Jeremy thinks. And this is a good one. I
haven't said enough already.
Yeah, that's right. We're just going to end this now so Jeremy doesn't get in trouble. So we are going to ask Jeremy what he thinks about hell. All right. What is hell? Is it a real place? Do people really go there? What does the Bible say about hell? And what about how we understand hell? And if there is no hell, what is the alternative? So let's hear what the hell Jeremy thinks about hell.
What does Jeremy think?
So, yeah, I think the last 10 minutes were kind of hell, to be honest with you. No, I don't know what I think about hell. And I say that as someone that's studied quite a bit. And I actually, some of my talking points, because again, I got this agenda like an hour and a half ago. So I'm like, all right, what is my theological disposition on hell?
I sent it yesterday.
I
so
did, but I didn't see it
fault.
I didn't see it till you said the Slack thing this morning, the actual agenda. And I got to stop saying All right, so here's where I'm at, and you guys can chime in at any point. And Rusty, I even have a point that maybe you can help out with because I know you're doing the Revelation class right now. The big thing that we have to understand is the Bible doesn't talk about hell a lot at all. It actually, when you study the Bible, it is not a central theme of the Bible. It is very rarely that it's talked about. One of the guys I was reading not too long ago had nothing to do with this, but I was reading a book, and you know, he talks about that when we look at the book of Acts, the Acts is kind of like, it's the Acts of the Apostles. It's the start of the church, you know, type of thing. There's not one mention of hell in the beginning of the church. Like when these guys are going out and Paul's doing his mission work and all this, they don't even talk about it. Now, there's obviously some things later in some of the letters that Paul writes, and there's some things where we get a lot, especially from the book of Revelation, you know, but for the most part, it's not talked about very much. The only time that Jesus really references it, there's a couple of kind of references it, but the big one people always talk about is when he talks about Gehenna, which is physically a place here on earth. So even when Jesus talks about hell, he's talking about a place actually here on the earth. So the Bible doesn't talk a lot about it, which causes a lot of misunderstandings about it. Most of what, when we talked about this a couple weeks ago, when we talked about demons, I think most of our understandings of hell come from art and come from books like Dante's Inferno. So it doesn't actually come from the Bible. Now there's some things from Revelation that we like stick to and hold on to when it comes to things like the lake of fire and all that stuff. But most of it does not actually come from the Bible. And so I actually was recently listening to N.T. Wright. He was given a discourse on the afterlife, and I didn't know we were going to talk about this. And he tells a story about he's talking to this Greek Orthodox guy who's like one of the most brilliant scholars in that world. And they're at the Sistine Chapel because they're there for a lecture. And one of the things the Greek Orthodox brought up to N.T. Wright was he says, he looks at the pictures of Jesus on the walls and ceilings. He goes, I understand that. And he looks at the pictures of Moses. And he goes, I understand that. But then apparently at the Sistine Chapel, there's a whole part that's about the judgment of man. And he looked at that and he turned to N.T. Wright and he says, I don't understand that. And he goes, I don't understand that scene. And he was saying that to N.T. Wright that that's how Western Christianity has kind of like manufactured this. But that's not actually the way the Bible talks about it. And so hell is one of those things. So, there's several views about it that many of you probably have never even thought about or talked about. And these are traditional views. These are not me making these up, and I'm not even going to say which one I have. So the most common one is obviously that hell is like a place of unspeakable torment. So that's like the lakes of fire, sulfur, demons with the pitchfork, all of that type of stuff. And so that's one of the ones that we're more kind of familiar with. There's some that, wander into universalist territory where hell's like a ghost town that like it's just a place where souls go. And they're there for a little while. Obviously, the Catholic view, there's purgatory where you go to this place for a little while, and then eventually you go to heaven or hell, depending on how things play out. There's obviously, you've never heard this, annihilationism, which is the idea that essentially, and there's different views even within annihilationism, where when we die, you just cease to exist. So hell is just the ceasing to exist. Or there's some annihilationists that believe that you go to hell for a period of time, and once you've paid for your sins in hell, then you either cease to exist or you maybe potentially even go to heaven at that point. There's conditional immorality, which is kind of similar to annihilationism, where you're conditionally there for a little while, and then at some point you either cease to exist or you potentially maybe go to heaven. So there's all these different views, and these are not, like, a lot of these views are traditional views, and you'd actually be shocked to some of the people that believe some of these things. C.S. Lewis, Augustine, questioned a lot of these things. Obviously, more recently, Rob Bell, we've talked about, got in a lot of trouble for his book, and then there was a lot of response to that. But all that to say, the people that really, really study hell and aren't just preaching sermons where they pound on the pulpit and try to scare people, most of them come out on the other end going, I don't really know much about it, and that's why they don't talk about it very much. And so to answer this question, I'm not going to be able to answer it because I don't understand myself after studying it very much. I do think that we use hell as a scare tactic, and I'm not sure if that's right or wrong. I wrestle with that at times. I do think that there is probably a real reality that is hell, but I don't know what that looks like. I think we get obsessed with it. I do think, and I talk about this in the What Is class, my understanding, so if you're going to get to the end of the class, my understanding of Scripture is basically, and this is where Rusty can maybe speak into it a little bit with the Revelation stuff too, is that the end of Scripture, the overall arching point, especially in the New Testament of Scripture, is the idea of heaven and earth coming together. And whenever we see hell referenced in the Bible, it almost speaks of it as if hell's already here, that we've already like created hell here on earth. And so when heaven and earth come together in this final way, the way it was supposed to be, the way it was in the beginning, whatever hell is, it can't exist here. And so I don't know if it's a place, if it's a time, if it's a, a multiverse. I just watched Doctor Strange last night. Like, I don't know what it is, but whatever it is, it's very clear that hell can't exist in what God has created and put together. Does that make sense? And so to answer it, I don't know. Do people go to hell? I mean, I tend to think that there is some type of reality of hell because Jesus does speak of it, but it's very little that he speaks of it, and he's not really clear on what it is. So any questions about that or thoughts? I mean, I know that's a lot. I know you're covering stuff in the Revelation class. So
yeah, I mean, the language that he uses as a first century Jewish person is apocalyptic language, which we hear the word apocalypse today. And immediately go to, The Walking Dead or some, the movies that there's a nuclear explosion. That's what the apocalypse is. In reality, though, apocalyptic literature is designed, and apocalyptic language is designed to evoke emotion, but require us to ask some questions.
Mm-hmm.
And most of what we read in Revelation, in the way that I understand Revelation and have studied it, is that John is discussing a current state of reality. These 7 churches in Asia Minor are being persecuted. They're watching people they love, and they themselves are being killed and hunted down and thrown to the lions and burned at stakes and crucified, and all because they follow the teachings of this Jewish person. So when Jesus would reference a hellish type of place, he's tapping into a community understanding of what apocalyptic language means, which is there are these terrible things that are happening and that we're enduring and that we suffer, but that there is hope on the other end of it. And people think that apocalyptic stuff is should be scary and hopeless, but actually apocalyptic literature is designed to give hope that, yeah, we're enduring these terrible, awful things now, but we know that there is hope on the other side of this. So just in terms of when Jesus references it, I mean, you don't see the word hell anywhere. There is no word hell in the actual text. You see Gehenna, you see Sheol, you see Hades. Those are like the 3 you see, but
Which Hades is even playing on not even a Jewish understanding of the end. Yeah,
right.
It's Greek understanding.
So it's one of those where you almost have to ask: is Jesus doing the same thing that we see John do when he writes Revelation, which is I don't have good enough descriptive language to paint for you this image, so I'm going to borrow from these other things.
Right.
And so I think that this is a really I was curious to hear what you said, just because it is so complicated, and it's amazing to me how many Christians want there to be a hell. Like
my favorite response to it was actually Andy Stanley, was that when Rob Bell came out with his book, and I don't know how I feel Rob Bell. I will say this about Rob Bell's book: most of the people that were so upset about it never read it. When I read it, and I'll be honest, I'm a Rob Bell fanboy. I have been for years. I mean, there's some stuff he says I don't agree with anybody. I never agree with anybody on everything they say. I don't want people to agree with me on everything I say, because that's just stupid. But I do like a lot of what he says. But I did notice that a lot of the stuff that he said in the book, he was quoting Augustine. He was quoting C.S. Lewis. He was quoting some of the Desert Fathers. Like, he's quoting stuff that people have been wrestling with for a long time. It's just that he put it all together. Now that he needed to put it together in the way that he did it, yeah, that I get where some people push back on that. But when the book, I mean, it was super controversial when it came out, and it's been a while now, but Andy Stanley said that, because he was friends with Rob Bell, that Charles Stanley, his dad, had said, "Hey, have you heard about this fella, Rob Bell, that wrote this book?" And he says, he's saying that hell doesn't exist, and Andy Stanley's response was like, "Well, I hope he's right. Don't you?" I hope he is right. I hope there isn't a hell. Like, I do hope that, he doesn't necessarily that he believes in universalism or that we all eventually just end up. But why would you want someone, if you think hell is the worst place ever, you think it's the absence of God, which is another view I didn't get into, but it's a place where it's absent of God, that, I remember a professor telling me one time that hell would be that you see that there's a God and then it's stripped from you. Okay. Yeah. That's horrible though. But that you want people to go there. And I know there's terrible people that have existed in humanity and even in our own lives, but to burn and rot, or just to cease to exist, or whatever, forever, or why would you want somebody as a Christian who's supposed to love people and understand it's all about forgiveness, and none of us deserve it anyway? So I didn't mean to cut you off, but that is my biggest thing I wrestle with, is people want there to be a hell, not because they want to be theologically correct, because they want to know that somebody's going to be there. Do you know what I'm saying? And they want to be able to tell somebody they're going there.
Yeah. So Penny, are you pro hell or are you anti hell?
I'm not even sure I even should be talking about this either. This is some interesting discussions today. So if you've ever wondered what we talk about in the office, this actually came up in conversation a couple of months ago. And someone in the office, I won't say who, was saying, yeah, I believe in there's a hell where there's torment. And I'm like, do you really? Because I don't I guess that's just my opinion. I don't believe there's a place where they go and they're tormented forever and ever. And the reason I say that is because I grew up in a church where hell was a scare tactic, right? The preacher would say, well, if you love God and you love Jesus and accept him, then you don't go to hell. And I'm like, okay, then I'll love God. Like I just don't believe in our God. That means that our God that we serve, Jesus, is exactly the same way. He's basically going, you can come love me and you can go to heaven and spend eternity with me. But if you don't, you're gonna go to hell and be tormented by demons.
Well, and I think to your point about that, about like you love me and come to heaven, our misunderstanding of heaven is so far off.
Right. Well, that's what I'm saying. And it's the same concept.
I think that our misunderstanding of heaven informs our misunderstanding of hell. So I think they're on equal. Does that make sense?
No,
and
I
think
agree.
that is where we get into a lot of confusion, is because of, we think, yeah. And so I agree with that. Like, now to your point, like, I think what's fascinating is, so we've obviously covered abortion. So let's not just go ahead and cover hell. Somebody, maybe even the person right now that's getting mad at us for saying these things, or saying, oh, Penny said you don't believe in hell. Well, like, these are really complicated issues, I'll be honest with you. But even more importantly, I think when someone says, okay, well, this person said this about hell. First of all, you don't know. They don't know.
No,
the listener right now that's getting mad about this conversation, if you exist, or you haven't already turned us off, you have to understand this is a really complicated conversation when it comes to this. And secondly, it's okay that we disagree on these things. This is not one of those things where we have to go, and even if we do disagree and you think it becomes something that needs to be talked about, the whole mark, going back to the original thing about the billionaire in Korea, it's about what we do, not what we believe. I mean, that is the central theme that we see over and over. Now, we have to believe certain things. We talked about, what was it last time? The
essentials.
Essentials. We have certain things we have to hold on to, for sure. But it's what you do with those things that really matters. And so, yeah, we need to have conversations about some of these tough things. But at the end of the day, like, when it comes to hell, I mean, I believe that there is a reality of hell. I have no idea what that looks like.
Well, I feel the same way.
I hope that it's not a place that people go and burn, because I do have a hard time understanding all loving God with that. Again, I could be completely wrong about this. I'm just telling you what the information is out there that most people don't think about.
So my opinion is that maybe it's just that that person would cease to exist, right? They would be absent from God, because let's be in reality. If the person goes to hell and they're there, their mind is still connected to God. So how is that completely absent from God? So to me, the only way to do that is ultimate death and nothingness. And that's frightening. That's pretty scary to think that after life, nothing else is there.
Yeah.
So
where do we get that? Where do we get that as a faith? Because I was brought up in a flavor of Christianity that's what we believed. It was, either you're go up in the clouds with God, and the other option is you just burn forever. But you could see your family and loved ones, that believe. And then, but that, I mean, as I've got older, and you actually like, oh, where does that in the Bible? Like, where does that even?
A lot of it is massaging scripture. So, like, Abraham, the story of Lazarus and Abraham's bosom. But like, Jesus is not talking about heaven and hell. Like, the point of that story was not heaven and hell. But we pull details out of that story. It's a parable that we pull out of that. So that's part of it, where they get the bib. But like, a lot of it, honestly, so like heaven, a lot of it comes from art. A lot of it comes from misunderstandings of scripture. A lot of it comes from, and I do believe that a lot of the hell talk, it was a scare tactic and it worked. Like, do you want to go to hell? Like, no, like, I don't want to go. I mean, just even nobody wants to go to hell. Like, I mean, there's probably some people are like, yeah, there's some songs out there, Highway to Hell and stuff. Like, that's my anthem. But no, people don't want to go to hell if it exists, but it's a scare tactic because that's the alternative. And so, anyway, so yeah, I mean.
Well, yeah, I definitely, we had revivals that were very detailed of the things that would happen to you in hell, of like graphic details of abortions and things like that. Like, that was like, this is what these people are doing. Don't be these people. And you're like,
but I think that's my bigger point. My understanding of hell now, the here, I think what did N.T. Wright say? That it's become not the there, but the here now to him. That we've created hell on earth. Like, we have. I mean, the way we treat people. I mean, the tragedies that are still going on in the world, genocide that's still going on in the world, people living in extreme poverty. I mean, the things that are going on that we're doing to each other. I mean, I don't want to get into this, but like capitalism, We're all wearing clothes that some kid in some country made that's barely getting by. We have Apple iPhones. Well, they had to put nets outside of the manufacturing place because people were committing suicide, because of the working conditions and I mean, we don't talk about this stuff, but we have created living hells here on earth. And I think that part of that is human greed and just the world that we live in and our fallen nature and all that stuff. So yeah, hell already exists. Like, it's here. Now when we die, that's the part I don't know, and like I said, I do believe the ultimate story that's being written by God is that heaven and earth come together, which is what Jesus talks about more and more. So at that point, whatever hell is, or the idea or reality of hell, it can't exist within that realm as it comes together. Does that make sense? But the whole like scare tactic side of it, again, yeah, if hell exists, or even the reality of hell exists in some form, nobody wants to go there. I don't want anybody to go there, but I'm not gonna like make that your alternative. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, it just it becomes unhelpful, I feel like.
Yeah, and Jeremy, to your point, I think when we live pretty good lives for the most part here in the United States, and not that we don't suffer at times and struggle with things that we feel or see and or experience, but by and large, we've got it pretty good. And a family member of mine said to me he lost somebody very close to him, and this person was not a active Christian person, and he wanted me to do the funeral, and he was just like, I just needed, don't tell me he's in hell, because he lived hell. Like, his, from the time he was a kid, the things he experienced, the things he saw, this was his hell. So how are you going to tell me that he left this place with no chance, no shot in life, and now he's punished because of that for all eternity? And so I don't know where I fall on this either. And I think that it is something that we focus on a whole lot. And I know that people would say, well, it's eternity, so why wouldn't you want to focus on it? But at the same time, what we see over and over again in scripture is less concern, almost no concern about what happens after we die, and almost all the concern about what we do with this place while we're here.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just, that was shocking to me when I studied the book of Acts, and there's not a single mention of the idea of hell, or really that much about the afterlife. It's like, it was, their concern just wasn't that. And the fact that we've made it such a central part of our teaching and understanding, when there's almost hardly anything in there about, and the same can be true for heaven. There's not that much in the Bible about heaven. And, that can be, concerning to people, but it's just the reality of what we've been given. So,
well, and I think that in that world, in that time, death was more familiar to people. Like, and it still is in certain parts of the world, that people are just more accustomed to death for whatever reason that is, whether it's they experience it more often as a society, as a culture, or they just don't have the preconceived notions about it that maybe we do because of what we believe or have been taught to believe. But I think that we are very, very uncomfortable with the concept of death and dying and what happens next. And I think the ancient world, they just, well, if I live to be 30 years old, I'm beating the odds by quite a bit at that point, and so child mortality rates are high, maternal mortality rates are high. And so I don't know. I think that it taps into some deeper fear that we have about death as a culture and as a society. So let's talk about announcements. We've got a lot coming on here at Journey that we need to just make sure that you're aware of. Parents, camp registrations are still open. You can do that at whitemillschristiancamp.com for kids below kindergarten, so like preschool age, all the way up through 8th grade. If you go to our app, we have on there listed the weeks that we recommend or that we have people from Journey attending. If you're a high school parent, not a parent who's in high school, but you have a kid in high school. We have
we love those too.
We do, absolutely. We have high school beach camp. You can register for that on the app as well. The Revelation class, that is closed. We are at capacity, but if you attend that class, just as a reminder, we're resuming this Sunday, and then we will meet again on the 22nd instead of the 29th. That way you have your Memorial Day weekend free. preteens, children's ministry people, listen up. Tomorrow, May 13th, is the Activate event. You can register for that still through the end of today. And then next Sunday, May 22nd, there is the summer kickoff. It's a luau theme, so you can dress up like you're in Hawaii for a little trip. And then on May 27th, kindergarten through third grade Galaxy Wars is happening here at the building again on that Friday evening. All of that and everything else you can find on the Journey app. Okay, let's talk for just a few minutes. We are running out of time here, but we were on a conference trip this past week. We went to North Point Church down in Alpharetta, Georgia for the Drive Conference, and it was a fantastic conference. Best I've ever been to. And I just wanted to take a couple of minutes and talk about our favorite moments or takeaways from the conference. So who wants to go first? Anybody?
Go ahead, somebody.
Yeah, I mean, I just think I think first of all, we need to thank our listeners because, going to conferences like that, it's part of the church, but it's because of their contributions to our church,
Absolutely.
And so we can't go to this stuff without them. So it was a great experience for all of our staff. We learned so much. North Point is one of the largest churches in America. But we didn't go there because they're large. We went there because we believe that what they're doing is making an impact, not only in their area, but also a lot of churches are learning from them because they're super creative. They're super organized, and just the way they present things is so unique. And so it was a great experience for our staff. And so, yeah, I think that we learned a lot of things that we're going to hopefully be able to implement here and make us better and more efficient as a church. So.
Great.
I think that the term a lot of the country that the term mega churches is demonized, but that church was amazing, but it was not off-putting. Like even as a Christian, sometimes I go to some of these churches or see them and think, "Ugh, this may be not the best." But that place, it was amazing, and everything about it was just, I mean, it was just a well-oiled machine. It was a big place that needed to be ran well, and I think we could take a lot here at church about the structure of how smooth things ran.
So their worship was insane. I mean, some of the music they put on was just crazy. And it was almost, it was a lot to take in because I was trying to take in things like, we could possibly do that at Journey. But I want to tell you this, the first night we were there, the sun was starting to set outside and the lighting of the stage was actually setting with the sun to have this feel of like, they're all sitting outside and you could hear the bugs. Like it was crazy how they did this. And they were singing old hymns. And it was just this beautiful moment. Like it felt, as big as the church was, it felt so personable. And I loved it. And I wish I could bottle that and like have it all the time in my head. So maybe we'll try some old hymns sometime, see how it goes. And people might really like that.
And the haze machine.
Oh, it was insane.
We'll set the smoke alarms off.
Oh.
Did it really?
No,
it would here.
Yeah,
we tried it
aren't high enough.
But no, it was a great conference, and we are running low on time. But I think we all learned a lot, and hopefully we can implement a lot of that stuff. And so, thanks for letting us go there.
Yes.
And we will be talking more probably about some of the stuff we learned not only on the podcast but from the stage and in different environments. And so, just know that we learned a lot, and I've already had a lot of conversations about it.
I want to tell one story before we end here, and that is on the night we arrived. It was a Tuesday. I'll never forget this. We went and played Topgolf as a staff, and Jeremy and I ended up on the same bay, and I was made fun of because I brought my my golf glove that belonged to my now deceased grandfather.
Your haunted golf glove.
That's right. He passed while wearing that golf glove. He didn't really, but I was very close to my grandfather, and I thought, hey, this will help me swing it a little bit better. And everybody was making fun of me, including Jeremy. And we would get up there, and Jeremy's got a great swing, and he'd lay into a ball and launch it, and he'd hit, right in the pit, right where it was supposed to be. And then I'd come up, and I'm not a great golfer, and I'd hit the ball, and it would bounce a couple of times, and then like maybe roll into the pit. And Jeremy would get, 8 points for his, and then mine would flash up real big, 30 points, and it happened like 6 or 7 times.
It was a lot.
It was not just one time. It happened several times.
And I am not a great golfer, but I can crush the ball.
He's a better shot than me.
And there were several times like I hit the farthest pin, and it would literally like go into the net from the air.
Yeah.
And it would give me 6 points. And then Rusty, there was one time, remember that one?
It didn't even go in.
It didn't even go in. It was 20 yards short of the hole. Like it didn't even go into the net. And it gave you like 60 points. And I remember
Papa was with
the
me
magic
that evening.
glove.
It was ridiculous. Yeah.
And so if anybody wants to
Cheat.
You don't want to
cheat.
borrow that.
Yeah, you probably don't. Anyway, thanks for listening, everybody. We are so grateful for you, and we will talk to you soon.